And so, my friends, we find ourselves on the eve of Yom Kippur, apart but together. Yom Kippur is the Jewish people's festival of the soul, and Kol Nidrei, its sacred portal, a night of deep emotion, a night, as the psalmist wrote, to rejoice with trembling. Kol Nidrei, the ancient rhythmic words of release from vows, oaths, and promises that we have failed to keep. The melody of spiritual amazement fills us with awe as we stand before God and Torah. We stand together, strengthened by community in this hour of shared weakness and humility. Tonight, we confess our flaws, admit our imperfections, and acknowledge the infinite power far beyond our understanding. We commit ourselves to great endeavors because we're able to feel so deeply and think critically. We know that our ideals are far greater than our ability. Our promises surpass our might. Freedom is Kol Nidrei's true gift. The freedom to begin a new year without past failures, to try and reflect God's image in the world. And because each of us is mortal, we resolve to live with inner strength and nobility. We enter Kol Nidrei to face our own humanity. And so, my friends, I want to begin by acknowledging Ian and Robert for that beautiful rendition of the Bruch Kol Nidrei. In this time of uncertainty, having the familiar is so important, so incredibly important to each and every one of us. I also want to recognize and affirm, thank and appreciate each and every one of you who have chosen in these difficult, uncertain times to be with us here tonight. Whether you're joining us on Facebook, on YouTube, through the live streaming of our services through tbi.org.au, or whether you're listening to the live audio simulcast on Jair, you are most welcome. We enter this sanctuary to affirm the sacredness of our lives and the sacredness of our tradition. Within these walls, virtual or otherwise, we sit surrounded by numberless generations. Our ancestors built the synagogue as a visible sign of God's presence in their midst. Throughout our long history and our endless wanderings, it has endured a beacon of truth, love, and justice for all humanity. Its presence guided our ancestors to lives of righteousness, holding up to them a vision of their truest selves. Now we, in our turn, in our time, and in our way, enter this sanctuary to affirm the sacredness of our lives. May we enter this place in peace. May holiness wrap around us as we cross into this threshold. Weariness, doubt, the flaws of the human hearts, the harshness of the year gone by, let these drop away at the door. That peace, reflection, and contemplation settle upon us as we lift our hearts in prayer. I invite you to turn with me in the Machzor to page 7. If you don't have a copy of our Machzor at home, then you'll find in the link below this the stream, wherever it is that you're joining us, a link to the flipbook. But I encourage you to follow along as we head now into the sanctuary to kindle the flame of remembrance, the Ner Neshama.
Baruch atah Adonai, notea betochenu chayei olam. You are blessed, Eternal One, who places within us life everlasting. The human spirit is the lamp of God, searching out what lies within us. Guided by the flame of conscience on this sacred night, we search for truth. Shine your light upon us as we strive to serve you. May we find safety in your faithful love. We light the flame of healing and of forgiveness. On this atonement night, we give thanks for love.
You can see standing in front of Michelle right now that there are two sets of candles. The first lit already, recognizing the fact that earlier tonight we welcomed many of our younger families to a family service in the Kol Nidrei. And now we invite you to join with us, my wife and I at home, Michelle in the sanctuary, as we kindle the lights now of Yom Tov.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Yom HaKippurim.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehecheyanu v'kimanu v'higianu lazman hazeh.
We turn forward now to page 10 in our Siddur, as we are reminded that light is sown for the righteous, radiance for the joy of pure of heart. With one voice, assemble the past sages and present declare, all may pray as one in this hour, night of repentance. Let none be excluded from our community of prayer. With one voice, God and congregation proclaim, all may pray as one on this day of return. Through all of us have erred. Let all find a place in the sacred assembly.
וישיבה של מעלה וישיבה של מטה על דעת המקום ועל דעת הגל אנו מתירים להתפלל עם עבריינים בישיבה של מעלה ובישיבה של מטה על דעת המקום ועל דעת הגל אנו מתירים להתפלל עם עבריינים בישיבה של מעלה ובישיבה של מטה על דעת המקום ועל דעת הגל אנו מתירים להתפלל עם עבריינים.
Kol Nidrei is the prayer of a people not free to make their own decisions. People forced to say what they did not mean. In repeating this prayer, we identify with the agony of our forebears who had to say yes when they meant no. Kol Nidrei is also a confession. We are all transgressors, all exiled from the highest we know, all in need of healing and forgiveness and reconciliation. For what we have done, for what we may yet do, we ask pardon. For harsh words, broken pledges, insincere assurances, and foolish promises, may we be forgiven.
Kol Nidrei v'sarei v'charamei v'konamei v'chinuyei v'kinusei u'shevot tin darna udeishteba אחרים נא ודסרנה על נפשתנה מיום כיפורים זה עד יום כיפורים הבא. עלינו לטובה. כולון יחרדנה ואון כולהון יאון שרן שיקין שביטין בטלין ומבוטלין לשרירין ולקיימין נדרנה לנדרי וסרנה לאסרי ושבועתנה לשבועות.
All our vows, resolves and commitments, vows of abstinence and terms of obligation, sworn promises and oaths of declaration, those we promise and swear to God, those we take upon ourselves. From this day of atonement until the next day of atonement, may it find us well. We regret them and repent those we are unable to fulfill. Let them be discarded and forgiven, abolished and undone. May they not be valid or binding. Our vows should not be counted as vows, our resolves as resolves, and our oaths, they should not be binding oaths.
בטלין ומבוטלין לשרירין
Nidrei
Vayomer Adonai, Sarachti Dvarecha. Vayomer Adonai, Sarachti Dvarecha. Vayomer Adonai, Sarachti Dvarecha. Sarachti
We asked, and God responded, I forgive you as you have asked. Rose and Morris have been having a lot of challenges in their marriage lately. And after several days of silence, Morris turned to his wife and asked, "What's wrong? What's the problem, Rose?" "The problem," she said, "the problem is that you don't have any empathy." Offended at her accusation, Morris went into the next room and he called his dear friend Joe. He explained what had been going on and asked Joe for Joe's advice. "Morris, we've been friends for a long time," he said. Do you trust me?" "Of course I trust you," Morris replied. "Okay, well, if you trust me, then I have to tell you that the problem in your relationship is that you have no empathy." Furious at his wife and at his friend, Morris gets in his car and drives directly to the synagogue to speak with the rabbi. Morris sits down in the rabbi's office and over the course of an hour explains the entire saga. To sum it all up, he says, my wife and my best friend have accused me of having no empathy. The rabbi looks at him and says, "So Morris, what do you think?" Morris paused for a moment and then replied, "To be honest, Rabbi, I don't understand why they feel that way." It's hard to tell a joke on Zoom, but I hope you chuckled at home as I delivered the punchline. As empathy, or the lack thereof, is something I've been thinking a lot about lately. To be clear, empathy is our ability to see the world through someone else's eyes, to enter into their feelings, to act in such a way as to let them know that they are understood, that they are heard, that they matter. Indeed, it has been said that the great gift of the human spirit is that we have the power of empathy. I was reminded of this firsthand a few weeks ago when I went for a walk with my family down to the St. Kilda Botanic Gardens. It was a warm day and we sat down next to the pond enjoying the sun for just a few moments. And as we did, we saw a guy running barefoot and doing some somersaults on the lawn in front of us. We also saw a broken sprinkler sticking out of the grass. And just then, just as we looked out at these two things, we saw the guy land on the broken pipe, and my kids and I collectively gasped. This wacky barefoot guy was suffering physically, and just seeing him, we all suffered as well. We were all feeling something of what he was feeling. That's empathy. We all have the ability to experience empathy. Think about all the times you've caught someone doing something embarrassing. You were probably embarrassed too. Isn't that strange? Why were you embarrassed? You were embarrassed because you were feeling that person's feelings. That's empathy. Unfortunately, this COVID crisis and the prolonged isolation from one another has put everything to a test. The healthcare system, the supply chains, and even social safety nets. This COVID crisis has also tested our moral character. And while I don't intend to stand here on this bima, virtual or otherwise, and suggest that we have failed this test, I think that on this night of openness and honesty, we have to admit that we've not exactly made the honor roll either. As we are taught in Mishnah Yoma, and we'll be reminded in the Machzor this evening, Averot shebein adam lemakom Yom HaKippurim mechaper. Averot shebein adam lechavaro ein Yom HaKippurim mechaper ad sheratzeh et chavaro. For transgressions against God, the Day of Atonement atones. But for transgressions of one human being against another, the Day of Atonement does not atone until we've made peace with one another. But how do you make peace with another without empathy for that other? Every year we gather on this day, on this night, and we say, Ashamnu, Bagadnu, Gazalnu. We betray, we steal, we scorn. We can all rattle off examples of the ways we hate, insult, and transgress. Yet have we ever stopped to think about why? Why do we neglect? Why are we unkind? The answer, I believe, is because of a lack of genuine empathy in our world. Without empathy, the door is left open to inflict pain on others and ourselves. Without empathy, the door is left open to sin. And so, as we gather on this Kol Nidrei, and as that beautiful melody still rings within our ears, I want us to think about ourselves, our actions, and the role we play in the world. I want to encourage us to think more deeply about empathy and the role that it plays in our lives. I was recently reminded of a commencement address that the then Senator Barack Obama gave in 2006 to students at Xavier University. He said, there's been a lot of talk in our country lately about the federal deficit. But I think we should talk more about our empathy deficit, the ability to put ourselves in someone else's shoes, to see the world through the eyes of those who are different from us. Now, not everyone might agree with Barack Obama's politics or like him as a person, but he put forward what philosophers like Adam Smith and Baruch Spinoza have in different ways affirmed over the centuries. That is, they have suggested, in fact, they have contended, that empathy is the engine for morality. When you see someone suffering and you are suffering in response, you want to make sure that that person suffers less. When there is a financial deficit, there may not be enough money to sustain an advanced economy. But when there is an empathy deficit, there may not be enough care to maintain a functioning society. On this Yom Kippur, this Day of Atonement, I want to think about our individual and our collective contributions to our empathy deficit. And more importantly, I want us to consider the antidotes for creating the more empathetic society our world so desperately needs. Many scholars have suggested that one of the sources for our empathy deficit is the rise of digital technology. The well-known psychologist Daniel Goleman argues that the one prerequisite for empathy is paying attention. If you're walking down the street and you're not simultaneously texting or talking on the phone, checking your email, then your mind is open to that which is around you. You might notice an individual suffering on the other side of the road. You might go out of your way to help. The greatest predictor, he says, for empathy is not our education, not our religion, not our politics. It's simply about not being distracted. Now, of course, we have a major problem with this right now. We all have in our pockets little machines that are literally designed to distract us. But if attention is a condition for empathy, then a world with less attention is a world with less empathy. When you are in the presence of another human being, put down the phone. When you are in a meeting in person or on Zoom, put down the phone. When you are in shul, physically or virtually, put down the phone. The first antidote to our empathy deficit is to simply pay attention. The second cause of the lack of empathy in our world is what Peter Basgott describes as tribalism. In his book, The Empathy Instinct, he describes an experiment with a group of students watching a stranger play roulette and receiving electric shocks every time he guessed the wrong number. When the students were told that the stranger had a similar background to theirs, same kind of city, same kind of education, same political view, same socioeconomic level, they responded empathetically to their suffering. But then when they were told that the stranger has a very different background, they were unmoved by the pain that they saw. As Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks wrote, indifference towards the not like us is capable of disabling our empathy response. The consequences often promotes racism, chauvinism, and other expressions of hate. That's why our tradition challenges us to remember our past, to remember that we were strangers in the land of Egypt. When we have power and we see someone who is powerless, we need to remember our past. We need to remember that the person that is radically different from us, the person who dresses differently, speaks differently, and thinks differently, was once us. The antidote, as John Lennon put it, is to imagine all people living together. Peace. The antidote to tribalism is the celebration of diversity and the affirmation of what unites rather than what divides us. The third cause of the empathy deficit I see in our society today is the problem of ideology. In our tradition, this is best illustrated by the book of Job. For those who don't know, Job was that perfect individual who feared God, avoided evil, and then had bad things start to happen to him. He lost his wealth, his children died, and on top of it all, he got very sick himself. When his three close friends heard what had happened, they came to comfort him. Together with Job, they wept, they tore their clothes, they put ashes on their heads, they sat on the ground for 7 days and 7 nights. They saw Job's sorrow, and they were filled with sorrow. They saw his pain, and they experienced pain. And after some time passed, Job started talking. He cursed the day that he was born, and he cried out that he did nothing wrong to deserve such tragedies. After all, as he said, he was a respected judge in the community, and he displayed true empathy towards even the weakest members of society. Imagine how Job felt when, in response to his dismay, his so-called friend Eliphaz got up and declared, "You are evil, Job, and there are no boundaries to your sin. You robbed the poor, you took food from the hungry, you are corrupt, and you have abused your brothers." Why did Eliphaz say all these things? Why can't Eliphaz see the truth about his friend? The answer for me is quite clear. Eliphaz was blinded by his ideology. He was blinded by his theology. His theory is that God is good and God controls the world. Good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people. There is a symmetry between one's biography and one's destiny. With this as his theology, it's easy to see how Eliphaz justifies the legitimacy of Job's suffering. That is what happens when theology blinds us. That is what happens when we can't see the people living next to us. And let me be clear, it isn't just theology, but any ideology, any theory we have about the world. Feminism can do this, communism could do this, capitalism, socialism, liberalism, vegetarianism, any ism, any ideology that we use to understand the world can block our ability to see the actual people in the world. And while the connection to our story helps us to understand other people, it's our attachment to our ideologies that frequently separates us. And here our tradition is literally screaming at us through the centuries to put aside our ideologies so that we can truly see the humanity in all people. The antidote for ideology seems to be the recognition that we all created B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God, in the divine image. And then ultimately we have more in common than we allow ourselves to believe. The fourth and final challenge to empathy that I want to share this evening is related to ideology. It is the political polarization that is becoming increasingly common in our country and our society. In the good old days, a political debate was something that the rabbis described as l'shem shamayim, for the sake of heaven. In the simplest terms, it was a disagreement between two people who both thought that the other was wrong. Increasingly, however, our political and communal debates are no longer built about one person or a group of people thinking that the other's ideas are wrong. No, instead, and more critically, they seem to be built upon the belief that they are so right that the other person must have something fundamentally wrong with them. This sort of societal polarization, according to sociologist Robert Putnam, is when we hate other people just because of their views. Think about what happens when you listen to someone with an opposing point of view. The tendency is to see that individual as threatening or damaging. In this climate, every side feels like the victim. When opinions are so polarizing and we all feel victimized, it's almost impossible to experience empathy. Jewish tradition through the Talmud teaches us something very important here. The Talmud expects all Jews to do just two things. One, to study the Talmud, and two, follow the law. But if you've ever studied the Talmud, you'd know that if you have a question about Jewish law, then don't go to the Talmud. You won't find the answer. You'll only find an argument about the answer. As Israeli philosopher and Talmudic scholar Moshe Halbert put it, the paradox of the Talmud is the canonization of disagreement. To study Talmud and obey Jewish law means to live according to one position while reading and understanding dissenting points of view. Imagine a progressive reading a book written by conservatives, or someone on the right of politics listening to a podcast by someone on the left. This is the model of the Talmud. In fact, when the Talmud delineates what it takes to become a member of its highest court, the Sanhedrin, it teaches that the candidate has to be a person that can find 150 arguments to prove the purity of an unkosher animal. Think about that for a moment. Think about what it is required to take something that is fundamentally against your worldview and find 150 reasons why it is a legitimate way of thinking. Obviously, it takes serious intellectual sophistication, but it doesn't only require cleverness and depth of thought. It requires a mind that is elastic and flexible. This intellectual flexibility, according to the great feminist Carol Gilligan, is called radical listening. Typically, when we are presented with a worldview different from our own, we respond with judgment. When we're on the left and hear views of those on the right, we respond with judgment. When we are on the right and hear views of those on the left, we respond with judgment. What happens then? Asks Gilligan. What happens if we replace judgment with curiosity? There is an interesting relationship between judgment and curiosity. They are both responses to the same thing, otherness. Judgment declares why I think a person is wrong. Curiosity asks why a person thinks they are right. Jewish tradition calls on us to escape our own views for just a minute so that we can understand the world through the lens of someone else. The antidote to political polarization is simply radically listening to people whose views are different from yours. There you have it. 4 causes for our empathy deficit: distraction, tribalism, ideology, and polarization. The antidote for technological distraction, well, it's simple. Pay attention. The antidote to tribalism is developing your connection to your own story and seeing the plight of others through it. The antidote to ideological distance is learning to see other people and not letting strict ideologies blur your vision of reality. And finally, the antidote to polarization is radical listening, focusing, remembering our shared humanity. Look at the world clearly and listen, even if you disagree. Our community and our society are in desperate need of empathy. It's a big ask, I know. A task made even harder by these months of continued isolation and frustration. Yet perhaps this Yom Kippur, while we are so isolated from one another, we can begin to consider the possibility that it's not always about us, our views, our needs. Maybe on this Yom Kippur, we can all make an effort to lessen our egos and thereby enlarge our hearts. If we can do this, then maybe we might be able to build bridges between us, bridges that affirm our shared humanity and bridges that lead to our shared future. I hope so. This is what I am praying for. Ken Yehi Ratzon. May this be God's will.
So we return to the sanctuary and to page 15 as we rise for the call to prayer, the Baruch Hu.
Adonai,
continue on page 16. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim b'chokhmah poteach sha'arim, ובשפונה משנה עיתים, ומחליף את הזמנים ומסדר את הכוכבים בשמרותיהם ברקיע כרצונו. בורא יום ולילה, גולה אור מפני חושך, וחושך מפני אור. ומעביל יום ובין לילה, ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו, אל חי וקיים תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, המעריב ערבים, blessed you are God, creator of twilight and dusk.
אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. ויאמר אדוני אל משה לאמור, דבר אל בני ישראל, ואמרת עליהם, ועשו להם ציצית על כנפי בגדיהם לדורותם, ונתנו על ציצית הכנף פתיל תכלת, והיה לכם לציצית וראיתם אותו. וזכרתם את כל מצוות אדוני, ועשיתם אותם, ולא תטורו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם, אשר אתם זונים אחריהם. למען תזכרו, ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
אמת ואמונה כל זאת וקיים עלינו. Truth and faith. These are fundamental to our existence. God alone is their source. And we are Israel, a people of God. Our sovereign saves us from tyranny, redeems us from violence through countless wonders, from its brutality through great feats beyond measure. We are Israel, a people of God, the giver of life, who would not let our feet give way, the maker of miracles for us against Pharaoh, of signs and potents in the land of Egypt, the one who brought our people Israel from its midst to enduring freedom. Witness to this heroic might, the people thanked and praised God by name, freely accepting the reign of heaven. Then Moses, Miriam, and all Israel sang to you this song of joy.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה.
מלכותך ראו בניך, בוקע ים לפני משה ומרים, צלינו ואמרו,
אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד.
ונאמר, כי פדה אדוני את יעקב, וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו. ברוך אתה אדוני, גאל ישראל.
השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, והעמידנו מלכנו לחיים, ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך, ותקננו בצאתו מלפניך, והושיענו למען שמך. ויגן בערינו והסר מעלינו אויב דבר וחרב ורעב ויגון והרחק ממנו עוון והפשע. ובצל גנביך תסתירנו, יהיה שומרנו ומצילנו אתה, כי אל מלך חנון ורחום אתה, ושמור דדנו ובואנו לחיים ולשלום מעתה ועד עולם, מעתה ועד עולם. ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך, ברוך אתה אדוני הפורס סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל ירושלים. כי ביום הזה יכפר עליכם לטהר אתכם מכל חטאותיכם לפני אדוני תתהרגו.
On page 27, we rise for the Chatzi Kaddish.
יתגדל ויתקדש מרבה
אמן.
מעמד ורחירותיה וימליך מלכותיה
וחייכונו ביום אחד ובחיי לכל בית ישראל בגלה ובזמן קריב
ואמרו
אמן. יהי שמרבה מבורך לעולם ולעלמי עלמיה יתברך.
יתברך nase. Veita David Levita Lal. Shemer Kudesha.
Brichu.
La'ela ula'ela mikol birchata. Veshirata.
Tush vevata. V'nechemata. Damiran be'alma. Amen.
We continue now with the Amidah on page 29. As we've introduced the Amidah for almost 18 months now, we commit to praying as everything depends on God, but acting as if everything depends on us.
Adonai sefataitiv tov, ufi agid tehilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Ve'Elohei Avotenu ve'imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Ve'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Ha'el Ha'gadol Ha'gibor למען שמו ואהבו. זוכרנו לחיים, מלך חפץ בחיים, וחודרנו בספר החיים. למענך אלוהים חיים. מלך עוזר מושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה.
Amen.
Atagi boli ala Madonai, Mechaye meti matara lehoshia, Mashiv haruch umarit hageshem, Mazriach hashemesh umarit ata. Ukdoshim b'kol yom yahalelucha
Amen.
You are holy. Your name is holy. And the seekers of holiness praise you day by day. Selah. And so, eternal our God, give all creation the gift of awe. Turn our fear to reverence. Let us be witnesses of wonder, perceiving all nature as a prayer come alive. We bow to the sovereignty of your strength, the primacy of your power. We yearn for connection with all that lives, doing your will with the wholeness of heart. Awe-inspiring is your creation, awe-encompassing your transcendent name.
תהילה לרעך ותקווה טובה לדורשך ופתחון פה למייחלים לך ובכן תן כבוד. שמחה לארצך וששון לעירך וצמיחת קרן לדוד עבדך. שמחה לארצך וששון לעירך במהרה בימינו. ובכן צדיקים צדיקים יראו, צדיקים יראו וישמחו, וישרים יעלוזו, וחסידים ברינה יגילו. ובכן תן כבוד, ובכן תן כבוד, תן כבוד אדוני לעמך, ובכן תן
On page 34. And so may the righteous envision a bright future with joy, and the upright rejoice in a world where evil has no voice, and the rule of malevolence fades like wisps of smoke. Good people everywhere will celebrate, for the dominion of arrogance will have been removed from the earth. You and you alone, O God, will reign over creation. Upon Mount Zion, home of your presence, and in Jerusalem, a city set apart by you, as the psalmist believed. Yimloch Adonai le'olam, Elohai Tzion l'dor vador, hallelujah. The eternal shall reign for all time. Your God, O Zion, for all generations, hallelujah. You are holy. Your name is Or. There is nothing divine beyond you, as the prophet Isaiah taught. The source of all might is to be exalted through justice, the God of holiness made holy through righteousness. Baruch atah Adonai, HaMelech HaKadosh. Blessed the Eternal One, holy, sovereign. Kedushat Hayom continues on page 36.
אתה בחרתנו מכל העמים, אהבת אותנו ורצית בנו ורוממתנו מכל הלשונות, והקדשתנו במצוותיך, וקרבתנו מלכנו לעבודתך, בשמך הגדול והקדוש עלינו קראת, ותיתן לנו אדוני אלוהינו באהבה, את יום הכיפורים הזה למחילה, ולסליחה ולכפרה, ולמחול מועד כל עוונותינו, מקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, יעלה ויבוא, ויגיע ויראה וירצה וישמע ויבגד, ויזכר זיכרוננו וגדוננו, וזיכרון אבותינו, וזיכרון ירושלים עיר קודשך, וזיכרון כל עמך בית ישראל לבניך, לפלטה לטובה, לחן ולחסד ולרחמים ולחיים ולשלום, ביום הכיפורים הזה. זוכרנו אדוני אלוהינו בו לטובה, ובוגדנו בו לברכה, והושיענו בו לחיים. ובדבר ישועה ורחמים חוס וחוננו ורחם עלינו, והושיענו כי אליך עינינו, כי אל מלך חנון ורחום אתה.
On the top of page 42. Our God and God of our ancestors, Mechal, pardon our failings on this day of atonement. Erase our misdeeds, see beyond our defiance. For Isaiah said in your name, it is I alone, who wipe away the defiant acts, This is my essence. I shall pay no heed to your errors. And the prophet said, as a cloud fades away, as mist dissolves into air, your wrongs and mistakes shall be gone. I will wipe them away. Come back to me, that I may redeem you. As you said to Moses, for on this day atonement shall be made for you, to purify you of all of your wrongs, and pure you shall be in the presence of God. Eloheinu v'Elahei Avotenu, our God and God of our ancestors, lead us to holiness through your mitzvot, and may each of us find a portion of Torah that is ours. Bestow such goodness, teach us to be satisfied, and to know the joy of your salvation. Help us to serve you with purity of heart, for you are the forgiver of Israel. In every generation, granting pardon to the tribes of Yeshurun. We have no God of forgiveness and pardon but you alone. We praise you, O God, sovereign who forgives our failings and pardons our failings of your people Israel, the house of Israel. You banish our guilt from year to year. Your reign is majesty over the earth. You sanctify the people of Israel and the day of atonement. Our prayer of service, the Ratzeh, on page 46.
תמיד עבודת ישראל ישראל עמך אל קרוב לכל קורב בני אל עבדיך וחוננו שפוך רוחך עלינו ותחזינה עינינו בשובך לציון ברחמים ברוך אתה אדוני המחזיר שכינתו
מודים אנחנו לך שאתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו לעולם ועד. Our God and God of all generations, to you we are grateful forever. Rock and protector of our lives, your saving power endures from age to age. We thank you and tell the tale of your praise. your power in our lives, your caring for our souls, the constant miracles of your kindness. Evening, morning, and noon, we call you goodness, for your compassion never ends. We call you mercy, for your love has no limit. We call you hope, now and for all time. Al kulam yitbarach v'troman tzimcha malkeinu tamid le'olam va'ed. For all these gifts, God of mercy, may your name come to be blessed and praised, a gratitude of our daily offerings until the end of time. Inscribe the people of your covenant for life of goodness, and may all life resound with gratitude and faith in praise of your name. God, you free us and strengthen us. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha lachen ha'el havadot. Blessed are you, Eternal One, whose goodness deserves thanks and praise, which we offer now through the words of Shalom Rav on page 49.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki atahu melech adon lechol shalom. Ki atahu melech adon lechol shalom. V'tov enecha levarech et amcha Yisrael bechol letuv sha'ah b'shlomecha. Besefer chaim beracha v'shalom v'shalom. Besefer chaim beracha v'shalom v'shalom. Ufarnasa tova nizacher v'nikatev. Ufarnasa tova nizacher v'nikatev. Lefanecha anachnu v'chol amcha beit Yisrael lechaim tovim uleshalom. Baruch atah Adonai oseh shalom.
We pause for a few moments of Tefillat Halev, prayer of the heart. Turn forward now to the Vidui, the confessional prayers which begin on page 52. Our God and God of all generations, may our prayers reach your presence, and when we turn to you, do not be indifferent. Eternal One, we are not so arrogant and stubborn that we claim to be blameless and free of sin. In truth, we have stumbled and strayed. We have done wrong.
Eloheinu ve'Elokei Avotenu Tavo lefanecha tfilatenu ve'aleti talam Bagadnu, Gazalnu, Dibarnu Dofi, He'evinu, Ve'irshanu, Zadnu, Hamasnu, Tafalnu Sheker, Kizavnu,
Kizavnu,
Latnu,
Latnu,
Maradnu,
Maradnu,
Niatnu,
Niatnu,
Sararnu,
Sararnu,
Avinu,
Avinu,
Hashanu,
Ashanu,
Sararnu,
Sararnu,
Kishinu Oref,
Kishinu Oref,
Rashanu,
Rashanu,
Shichatnu,
Shichatnu,
Tiavnu,
Tiavnu,
Tainu,
Tainu,
Titanu.
Titanu.
Our turning away from your mitzvot and laws of goodness is a hollow pursuit. You are just concerning all that happens in our lives. Your way is the way of truth, while ours leads to error. What can we say to you whose existence is beyond time and space? What words of ours can reach your realm beyond the clouds, beyond heaven itself? Every hidden mystery, every revelation, surely you know them all. You know the secrets of the universe and the secrets of the human heart. You know and understand us, for you examine our inner lives. Nothing is concealed from you, nothing hidden from your sight. Eternal One, our God and God of our ancestors, we pray that this be your will. Forgive our wrongs. Pardon us for every act of injustice. Help us atone for our moral failures. We turn forward to page 55 as we continue now with the Vidui Rabbah, the long confessional, offered responsively.
על חטא שחטאנו לבניך בזדון ובשגגה, ועל חטא שחטאנו לבניך בדיבור פה.
For the ways we have wronged you deliberately and by mistake, for the harm we have caused in your world through the words of our mouths.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך באימוץ הלב, ועל חטא שחטאנו לבניך בטיפשות פה.
For the ways we have wronged you by hardening our hearts, for the harm we have caused in your world through careless speech.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בכחש ובכזב, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך ברכילות.
For the ways we have wronged you through lies and deceit, for the harm we have caused in your world through gossip and rumor.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בפלילות, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בזלזול הורים ומורים.
For the ways we have wronged you by judging others unfairly, for the harm we have caused you in your world through disrespect to parents and teachers.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בווידוי פה, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בהונאת רעה.
For the ways we have wronged you through insincere apologies, for the harm we have caused in your world by mistreating a friend or a neighbor.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בחוזק יד, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך במשא ובמתן.
For the ways we have wronged you through violence and abuse, for the harm we have caused in your world through dishonesty in business. For all these failures of judgment and will, God of forgiveness, forgive us, pardon us, lead us to atonement.
ועל כולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו, מחל לנו, כפר לנו, ועל כולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו, מחל לנו, סלח לנו, מחל לנו, כפר לנו.
On the top of page 58.
על חטא שחטאנו לבניך בגלוי ובסתר, ועל חטא שחטאנו לבניך בפריקת עול.
For the ways we have wronged you openly and secretly, for the harm we have caused in your world by losing self-control.
על חטא שחטאנו לבניך בגילוי עריות, ועל חטא שחטאנו לבניך במאכל ובמשתה.
For the ways we have wronged you through sexual immorality, and for the harm we have caused in your world through the consumption of food and drink.
על חטא שחטאנו לבניך ביצר הרע, ועל חטא שחטאנו לבניך בנשך ובמרבית.
For the ways we have wronged against you by giving in to our hostile impulses, for the harm we have caused in your world through greed and exploitation.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בלצון, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בנטיית גרון.
For the ways we have wronged against you through cynicism and scorn, for the harm we have caused in your world through arrogant behavior.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בשנאת חינם, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בטומאת שפתיים.
For the ways we have wronged you by hating without cause, for the harm we have caused in your world through offensive speech.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בלשון הרע, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בצרות עין.
For the ways we have wronged you with a slanderous tongue, for the harm we have caused in your world through a selfish or petty spirit.
ועל כולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו, מחל לנו, כפר לנו, ועל כולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו, מחל לנו, סלח לנו, מחל לנו, כפר לנו.
For all these failures of judgment and will, God of forgiveness, forgive us, pardon us, and lead us to atonement. On page 62, our song of forgiveness.
Shavatenu miboker Veyerae rinunenu adarev yale yale koleinu merev veyavo tzidkateinu miboker veyerae pidyoneinu ararev ya'ale ya'ale inuyenu me'erev v'yavo v'yavo slichatenu miboker v'yerae nakatenu adarev v'yerae nakatenu adarev yale menuzeno merev ve'avo lemano miboker ve'arae kipureno ad arev yale zichroneinu merev veyavo viudenu miboker veyerae hadratenu adarev yale yale dovkeinu merev veyavo gileinu miboker veyerae bakashatenu hadarev ויבוא אליך מבוקר ויראה עינינו עד ערב ויראה אלינו עד ערב.
May our yearnings rise above the shadows of dusk. May the searching of our souls reach you in the morning. All day, our praise is before you. May it be acceptable. May it be received till evening comes. On page 64, we ask that the Eternal hear our call.
Shema Kolenu Adonai Eloheinu Chod v'rachem aleinu v'kabel berachamim uveratzon Amarenu azin Adonai bina hagigenu iu leratzon imreifinu vegion libenu levanecha Adonai tzureinu vegoaleinu. אל תשליכנו מלפניך, ורוח קודשך אל תיקח ממנו. אל תשליכנו לזקנה, ככלות כוחנו, אל תעזבנו, אל תעזבנו, אדוני אלוהינו, אל תרחק ממנו, כי לך אדוני אוכלנו, אתה תענה, Eloheinu.
On page 66, God of forgiveness, we come before you in need of compassion. At Sinai, our ancestors promised we will do and obey, and yet, stiff-necked, they broke their word, praising an idol of God. How wondrous your compassion. In the face of their rebellion, your forgiveness for that moment of human weakness and doubt. We too have broken promises to you. We too worship the work of our own hands. We too make God a god, and we too forsake your word. At Sinai, you revealed 13 attributes of mercy, these aspects of your nature, your very essence. We now recall.
Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum v'Chanun, Erech Apayim v'Rav Chesed v'Emet, Noser Chesed l'alafim, Noser Avon v'Pesha v'Chata v'Nakeh.
Adonai, Adonai, God compassionate, gracious, eminently patient, loving and true, showing mercy to 1,000th generations, forgiving evil, defiance and wrongdoing, and granting pardon. To you do we call out, as we turn forward now to page 71 and continue with the words of Ki Anu Amecha.
Ki anu amecha ve'ata Eloheinu, anu banecha ve'ata avinu, anu avadecha ve'ata Adonenu, anu ke'alecha ve'ata Eloheinu, anu nachalatecha ve'ata goralenu, anu tzonecha ve'ata ro'enu, anu garmecha ve'ata notrenu, anu ve'ulatecha ve'ata yotzrenu, anu rayatecha ve'ata dodenu, anu segulatecha ve'ata krovenu, anu amecha ve'ata malkenu, anu mamirecha ve'ata ma'amirenu.
Turn forward to page 74 as our evening begins to draw to a close. for the words of Avinu Malkeinu. Avinu Malkeinu, ha'er lanu et derech chayenu. Avinu Malkeinu, illumine for us the path of our life. Avinu Malkeinu, how shall we find strength to take the road less traveled? Avinu Malkeinu, how shall we come to know the purpose of our existence? Avinu Malkeinu, how shall we learn to live life in vain? Avinu Malkeinu, how shall we leave behind our indifference? Avinu Malkeinu, how shall we distinguish between truth and falsehood? Avinu Malkeinu, how shall we find the answers to our questions? Avinu Malkeinu, we gird ourselves with strength to seek answers. Avinu Malkeinu, empower us, give us courage, be gracious to us and answer us, for the answers are both in you and with you.
Avinu Malkeinu Shema Koleinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, almighty and merciful, hear our voice.
Avinu Malkeinu Chatanu Levanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, we have strayed and sinned before you.
Avinu Malkeinu Chamol Aleinu Ve'ol Aleinu Ve'dabeinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, have compassion on us and on our families.
Avinu Malkeinu Gale Dever Ve'cherev Ve'rav Me'aleinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, halt the onslaught of sickness, violence, and hunger.
Avinu Malkeinu Kale Kol Tzar U'Masdin Me'aleinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, halt the reign of those who cause pain and terror.
Avinu Malkeinu Kodveinu Be'zever Chaim Tovim.
Avinu Malkeinu, enter our names in the book of lives well lived.
Avinu Malkeinu Chadesh Chadesh Aleinu Shana Tova.
Avinu Malkeinu, renew us for a year of goodness.
Avinu Malkeinu Malei Yadeinu Mibirchotecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, let our hands overflow with your blessings.
Avinu Malkeinu Harem Keren Mishechecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, let our eyes behold the dawn of redemption.
Avinu Malkeinu Nal Tajivenu Regam Milavanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, we pray, do not turn away from us, turn nothing away.
Avinu Malkeinu Kabel Merachamim Uvratzon Et Viladeinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, welcome our prayers with love, accept and embrace it.
Avinu Malkeinu Azeimanu Leman Shemecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, act towards us as befits your name.
Avinu Malkeinu Ase Leman Chaim Lo Lemanenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, act for your sake, if not for ours.
Avinu Malkeinu En Lanu Melechei Leata.
Avinu Malkeinu, you alone are our sovereign.
Avinu Malkeinu Petach Sharei Shamayim Litfilateinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, let the gates of heaven be open to our prayer.
Avinu Malkeinu Shema Koleinu חוס ורחם עלינו.
Avinu Malkeinu, hear our voice. Treat us with tender compassion.
Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu Vanenu, Ien Banu Maasim, Asei Imanu, Imanu Tzedakah v'chesed, Tzedakah v'chesed, Asei Imanu Tzedakah v'chesed, ve'oshienu. Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, O merciful and merciful, answer us with grace, for our deeds are wanting. Save us through acts of love and justice. We remain with our focus on the open Aron HaKodesh as we turn forward now to page 78 into the words of Aleinu.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שהוא נוטה שמיים ועושה הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו בגובה מרומים, ואלוהינו אין עוד, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, אדוני, אדוני אחד ושמו אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
And so we ready ourselves to offer the words of Kaddish Yatom, the mourner's Kaddish, on page 83. In advance of that, I will make mention that both in our healing service tomorrow and also in our Yizkor service later in the day, we will pause to consider the impact of this pandemic that keeps us apart. To remember the almost 5 million souls that have been taken by this pandemic, including lives in our own city this day. We'll also remember the loved ones who we are observing Yotzites for this week that includes these Yamim Noraim, these days of awe. But for now, on this evening, as we begin this long day, we remember those whose Shiva and Shloshim are still being observed as a community, whose passing is most recent, and whose families still feel most keenly the absence of their loved ones. We think of Fira Boyika, Vicky Sperling, and Lillian Tarry, all laid to rest in the last 7 days. We also think of Louise Abrams, Glenda Bernstein, Raymond Gando, Cantor Abraham Jacoby, Zelek Kaminsky, Stanley Klinger, Renee Crane, Len Levine, Ron Liner, Octabrina Oshman, Harry Redder, and Leon Strauch. We think of all of them, all of those who we've loved and lost, as we give thanks for the gift of life with the words of Kaddish Yatom. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabba, ba'amad divrei achirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayachon v'yomechon v'cheidachol Beit Yisrael, v'agalav izman kariv v'imru, amen. Yehei shmei rabba mevorach l'olam almei amaya, yiparach v'yishtabah v'yipa'ah v'yitroman v'yitnaseh, v'yitadav v'yitalei v'yitalal shmei d'kodisha b'richu. Leila u'leila, Mikol barachata v'sheata, tushbachata v'nechemata, daminan ba'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba midshmaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who creates peace in the heavens above bring peace to all of us, to all who mourn, but most of all, bring blessing to those who we remember. And so it's my pleasure to invite onto this bimmer, her bimmer, virtual or otherwise, our president, Joanne Lowy-Irons.
Thank you, Rabbi Lazaro. Good Yontef. As we join for Kol Nidrei, this is already TBI's second service this evening, with Rabbi Ettlinger having led our family Kol Nidrei, with Cantor Lalum, Mashpia Tammy Cohen, song leader Ido Sigia, and our wonderfully talented Patrick Funstra. I thank them as I thank those leading us in prayer now. I am so proud to be part of a congregation that recognizes the diversity of community and responds so creatively to our varied needs. Continuity and change is a very Jewish thing. If you have not yet taken the time to look at our High Holy Day website, I encourage you to do so and consider which of our 12 services and programs we are sharing over these 25 hours speaks best to you and your family. We begin in the morning at 8:30 with the Tot service. Yizkor is at 4:30 and Nila 5:45. The fast ends at 6:50 p.m. As Rabbi Lazaro reminds us, tonight is our night of confession. And in that spirit, it is important to acknowledge that a year ago, I never expected to be president addressing the community on Yom Kippur 5782. and I certainly did not imagine addressing the community virtually. But we are all evolving and changing, adapting to new practices as a result of the reality of restrictions. My fixed practices have been challenged a year and a half into COVID, and I, like many of you, are moving to find new ways to embrace our tradition. This is the strength of progressive Judaism, to be open to new ideas, innovation, and without a compromise of ideology. With challenges still percolating, I recognize it has not been a good year for all. I, together with your board and many of our dedicated members, have worked tirelessly to try and resolve a complicated year. I acknowledge these efforts have not always been as effective as we would have hoped, and appreciate that hurt was caused. I am sorry. And I am sorry as some still harbor ill feelings. And in the spirit of the season, I hope that we can come together to embrace and act in accordance with our core values and with kindness and empathy. TBI is more than a building. It is a place to belong. And belong we have through the pandemic, without missing a single Shabbat service, without compromise on our programs. We even introduced a daily daven, cemented our care calls, created a crisis relief group, broadened our Take Them a Meal program, and when safe, responsible, and permitted to operate, reimagined Nourish. We are a community that recognizes civic duty, responds to the call, and rises to the challenge. In this new year, offering a new start, a new beginning, I invite you all to give to our Kol Nidrei appeal so that we can continue building upon the foundations laid by previous generations. Some time ago, your board recognized that our dependence on annual membership is both unsustainable and a barrier to belonging. It is an inadequate model for generating funds and is increasingly out of reach for many. The time has come to disrupt old ways of giving so we may stay relevant, viable, and accessible. We have already taken steps to achieve this. In 2018, we created the L'Dor V'Dor Foundation to lift the financial burden of annual fees from our next generation by establishing a capital base that can sustain our cornerstone institution and continued growth. Our next step was to generate new income through strategic and relational partnerships that have ensured our congregation is financially sustainable. This allowed us to avoid increasing membership fees over the last 3 years. Tonight, we dedicate our annual Kol Nidrei appeal to reducing the cost of belonging for the first time in history, as we seek to reduce the cost of membership next year. Together, through sound financial management, forward-thinking strategic and relational partnerships, and you, our generous members and friends, we can remove the financial barrier of belonging. We can all be part of this shared effort, as in the time of building the Mishkan, each according to our own ability, each according to our own means. Please contribute, and we will build upon our traditional innovation and our innovative tradition. Your partnership is important to ensure our financial stability and the future services we offer. May you and your loved ones and the entire world be sealed in the book of life for a good, healthy, and sweet year. I wish you all well over the fast. Gema Chatima Tova.
Gema Chatima Tova, and thank you, Joanne. For those people looking for information about our services and schedules, there are, as Joanne said, 12 programs, offerings, classes, and sessions, including a wonderful text study tomorrow afternoon on Zoom with Rabbi Levi as he continues what is a generational conversation on the book of Jonah. So much awaits us as we come together as a community, isolating ourselves from this virus, but not isolating ourselves from each other. L'shana tova tikatevu. May we all be inscribed for blessing. An easy fast to you all.
לשנה טובה תיכתבו, לשנה טובה תיכתבו, תיכתבו.